In this video, I'll go over the restoration and recreation of the props for my show. This video does not go over the sun or the moon, but rather things like backdrops and fiberglass props. Though his stage is fairly sparse, we'll start with Rolf's stage. On Rolf's stage, I was able to get the original rain curtains from Creative Engineering. With the applause sign, I had to replace the bulbs and change out the front as it still had the Uncle Clunk on the air version inside. With the rainbow, it was heavily scuffed and I had to repaint parts of it like the color stripes. I used the original colors for this to maintain accuracy. And lastly, on his stage, I was able to reuse his original symbol, though I polished it a bit. On center stage, there was way more work to be done. I had to paint a 40-foot canvas with clouds on it to go behind the tree backdrops. This also goes behind Billy Bob's stage. With the tree backdrops themselves, they were very dusty and needed to be cleaned. After cleaning them, some needed touch-up work. The tree behind Mitzi had a fairly large damaged area which was repainted. They all looked great once they were finished. With Duke's drum set, I wanted it to look pristine. Though I looked into restoring the original drums, the snare was heavily damaged and the chrome had worn away in many places. The cymbals and hi-hat were cracked. I replaced all of these, but was able to keep the original bass drum. I used steel wool to polish all the chrome pieces like the drum, cymbal, and hi-hat stand. Once they were ready, I put them on the stage. I had to paint and put all new tree bark around the stand as well. Choo Choo's stump also had to be repainted, which Robbie did. With Fats, his organ needed a total restoration, both visually and electronically. Fats had fallen through the organ, smashing the 3 main plastic pieces. I was able to get new red plastic pieces from Aaron, but the front I had to have remade. In 2020, I had a few brand new organ fronts produced, which you can still purchase by contacting me on my website. The organ legs needed to be repainted and the prismatic plastic needed to be replaced as it had cracked in many places. I replaced the tubing for the exhausts and then moved on to the electronics. I replaced all the light bulbs, as even though some of them worked, I didn't want to have to take it apart again in the near future. Towards the end of the restoration, the organ started shutting off randomly. I checked everything on the board and all the wires, and nothing appeared to be causing the problem. However, I ended up checking the bottom of the driver board, only to find that the solder on a few pins had broken away from the board. This was the issue, and I had never encountered an issue like this prior. I spent a week trying to solve this mystery issue, only to find out it was a small problem like that. I ended up replacing a lot of the wiring in the process, and it was super frustrating, but luckily in the end, everything checked out. Let's move on to the sign. My show actually didn't come with a sign. It was destroyed with the cosmetics because when the show was auctioned off, they tried to remove anything that would have been copyrighted. Luckily, Aaron had a few brand new signs, and in 2020, I picked one up. However, it didn't come with the front, and Aaron didn't have any extras, so I had to have a new one made. I found a company locally that helped me digitize the front, create a new one, and here's a video of them making a mini test sign for me. And after that, you can see here they're drilling holes in the sign that they ended up making for me. These signs differ from the originals in that they are printed on the acrylic using a giant printer. Instead of being done by hand like they were in the 80s, they were silk screened on. The sign turned out great, and I attached it to the fiberglass. Though the electronics in the sign were brand new, they were still 40 years old, and Kanan and I had to replace the wiring because it had become brittle. Some of the sockets had to be replaced too, as they just didn't work. With Beach Bear, I needed to have his surfboard repainted, and I sent it to Robbie so he could paint it with enamel paint, and he did a great job. Beach Bear's stump was one of the only pieces that didn't need touch-up work. My show included the original clouds, which had been painted on plywood. They were fairly damaged, and I figured I could have them reproduced just like the sign and the organ fronts. The same people that made the sign were able to recreate them and print them on a thick sheet of plastic. Once they were finished, I hung them up on the ceiling. Lastly, the fiberglass rocks on the stage didn't need any touch-up work other than some cleaning. I still need to add the frog and Antioch to the stage, and they'll be finished shortly. With Billy Bob's stage, there was a lot of work that needed to be done. The Smitty Super Service Station backdrop required touch-up work. It was scuffed and dirty, and the foam insert that goes into the center with the car needed to be entirely replaced. And again, I enlisted the help of my friends who helped me make the Rock-afire sign. They scanned the insert and had to tediously repair it digitally, and then they printed it on a 1-inch foam board. It turned out amazing. The gas pump was another project. I had a fiberglass company repaint it, and they used glossy paint, which does differ from the original. I'm not sure if I like the original matte or the new glossy sheen better. It is more accurate to a real gas pump. Once it was repainted, I did touch-up work on the globe on top. I had a new insert printed for the gas price, and lastly, I had to paint a new gas pump handle to replace the old one. The fire prop and moonshine still needed some work. The fire needed a new flame, which I found online, and I also replaced the new bulbs inside and fixed some of the logs on the outside. The moonshine still had a thick coating of dust and needed some touch-up paint. The last major prop was Looney Bird's can. I had to repaint the whole can as it was badly scuffed, and I also had a new print made for the oil logo. The moonshine jugs didn't need that much touch-up. Overall, I'm really happy with how the props turned out on the show. It was actually a benefit that some of the props had to be remade, because now if someone else needs them, I'll be able to get them. This will decrease the scarcity of many of these pieces and make it easier to do restorations in the future.